There's a journal sitting in a museum right now. Cracked leather, faded ink, written by candlelight almost 2,000 years ago. The man who wrote it ruled the largest empire on earth. Armies, unlimited wealth, the power to end a man's life with one sentence. And in private, late at night, when no one was watching, he wrote things like this: "You are weak. Fix this." A man who answered to no one, talking to himself like a soldier who just failed inspection. Here's the strange part. What he wrote in that journal would survive longer than the empire itself. Rome fell. The armies disappeared. The borders he died defending don't exist anymore. The journal didn't. This is Meditations. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why a man who had everything still needed to remind himself every single day how to think. Marcus Aurelius never meant for anyone to read this journal. Imagine the tent, frontier war camp, somewhere along the Danube. Cold seeping through the canvas walls. Outside, soldiers coughed through the night. Plague had already torn through entire legions, and nobody knew who it would take next. Enemies pressed on every border. Back in Rome, a son he wasn't sure would ever be ready to rule. Most men in his position drank themselves numb, or took their exhaustion out on whoever was closest. Marcus picked up a pen instead. But why? Why every single night? If he skipped one day, what would actually happen? Nothing dramatic. No one would have noticed. No general would have questioned him. No soldier would have known the difference. And that's exactly why it mattered so much. This wasn't a habit anyone was forcing on him. There was no audience, no accountability, no one checking if he kept his word to himself. That journal was the one place in his entire life where he couldn't perform, where he couldn't be the emperor. He could only be a man, being honest. And maybe that's the real reason he never missed a night. Because the moment he stopped writing, he stopped checking himself. And a mind that stops checking itself starts drifting somewhere dangerous. What was he actually fighting in those quiet hours, alone in that tent? Not just the plague, not just the war outside. He was fighting the version of himself that wanted to give up. The version that wanted to feel sorry for himself. The version every single one of us has met at 3 in the morning, when everything feels like too much. Writing wasn't a hobby for him. It was survival, a way to catch his own mind, before it spiraled somewhere he couldn't pull it back from. Think about how strange that actually is. This was a man with physicians, advisors, generals, an entire empire of people whose only job was to serve him. And the one thing none of them could fix for him was his own mind. That part he had to do alone, with nothing but a pen and a piece of parchment, in the middle of a war he didn't choose. Now imagine losing everything in a single day. Your title, your home, everyone you love. Sound impossible? It happened to thousands during his reign. The plague didn't care if you were emperor or farmer. Marcus sat with that reality every night. And instead of running from it, he wrote his way through it. He needed one truth to survive what was coming. You don't control what happens. You only control how you respond. Page after page, he kept circling back to that same lesson. Not because he didn't understand it, because he kept forgetting it, just like we do. Even a man ruling the known world had to relearn the same thing over and over, one entry at a time. One line in Meditations changed how millions of people think about hardship. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus didn't write this sitting comfortably in a palace. He wrote it during the Marcomannic Wars, years of relentless fighting against Germanic tribes pushing across the Roman frontier. Add to that a plague that may have killed millions across the empire, floods that destroyed Roman granaries, and a famine that followed. By the time he was writing some of his most famous lines, Rome was being tested on nearly every front at once. He could have written about how unfair it all was. Instead, he wrote about how to use it. Let's make this real for your own life. You build a business for 5 years. One bad partnership wipes it out overnight, or someone you trusted completely walks away without warning, or a relationship you thought would last forever ends with one phone call. Your first instinct is to see it as an interruption, something standing between you and the life you were supposed to have. Marcus refused that framing. To him, the wall wasn't blocking the road. The wall was the road. Pressure doesn't create character. It reveals the character that was already there. Whatever was already cracked gets exposed. Whatever was solid gets stronger. So ask yourself something. The last setback that wrecked your plans, what did it actually hand you that you haven't used yet? Everyone quotes this line. Almost nobody applies it. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It doesn't mean stay positive. It means something harder to swallow. Someone insults you in front of people you respect. The words themselves last maybe 2 seconds, but your mind keeps going, replaying it, building a story about what it means. Whether they're right, whether everyone secretly agrees. That second part isn't the event anymore. You built that. This isn't just an ancient idea. It's happening to you constantly, in ways you don't even notice. Someone leaves a harsh comment on something you posted. 1 sentence. Maybe 10 seconds to read. But you check it again an hour later. Then again before bed. You start drafting a reply in your head you'll never actually send. That's not the comment anymore. That's the story you built on top of it. Or think about the email that sits in your inbox. Short, a little cold, no exclamation marks. Your manager probably wrote it in 30 seconds between meetings. You read it 4 times, searching for a hidden meaning that was never there. Or someone in a meeting questions your idea in front of the team. The actual moment is over in 5 seconds, but you carry it through the rest of the day, replaying your response, rewriting what you should have said. The event ends almost instantly. The reaction, you choose how long that lasts. Look around at how often this plays out in history, and one moment stands above the rest. A messenger rides into camp, exhausted, his horse barely standing. Word spreads through the soldiers before it even reaches Marcus's tent. Avidius Cassius, one of his most trusted generals, has declared himself emperor. An entire province has turned. Officers are choosing sides. Some are already talking about marching against Marcus. In that tent, with everyone waiting to see how he'll react, Marcus says nothing for a long moment. No shouting. No immediate orders for execution, which is exactly what most rulers in his position would have given. He waits. He gives Cassius a chance to stand down on his own. The rebellion eventually collapses without a final battle. Cassius is killed by his own men before Marcus ever has to face him directly. And when the news reaches him, Marcus doesn't celebrate. He says quietly that he wishes he could have spared the man's life and shown him mercy instead. That's not weakness. That's a man who had already separated the event from his reaction to it long before the moment ever arrived in his tent. Marcus thought about death constantly, not with fear, with clarity. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Try this for 10 seconds. Imagine you spent the last 2 hours scrolling through your phone, half watching videos, comparing your life to strangers, replying to messages that didn't really matter. Now imagine someone tells you you only have 1 day left. Would any of that still matter? Would you have spent those 2 hours the same way? That's what Marcus wanted people to see. Not fear of dying, awareness of being alive. Before we go further, picture one more scene from his life. A daughter, gone too young. A trusted friend, gone without warning. Marcus buried more people he loved than most of us will ever have to. And still, he showed up to rule the next morning. Not because the grief wasn't real, because he understood something most people never sit with. Death was never the enemy in his philosophy. Forgetting that it's coming, that was the real danger. He used death the way a blacksmith uses fire. Not to destroy, to shape. The argument you're still angry about, does it survive that thought? The approval you've been chasing from someone who barely thinks about you, does it still matter once you remember none of this lasts? He even wrote that the most famous men in history eventually get buried in oblivion, forgotten completely. That should sound bleak. To him it was the opposite. If nothing lasts forever, then the only thing that actually matters is who you are right now, today, not who people remember you as 100 years from now. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. Here's something strange. Most of the pain we carry every day was never actually caused by what happened. It was caused by what we decided it meant. Imagine standing in a long line somewhere, tired, ready to leave. Someone pushes past you, bumps your shoulder hard and keeps walking. No apology, no glance back. Immediately your mind says it. He disrespected me. Your jaw tightens, your whole mood shifts for the next 20 minutes. But did he actually disrespect you? Or did your mind decide that before he'd even said a single word? Maybe he didn't notice. Maybe he's rushing to a hospital. Maybe he's having the worst day of his year. You don't know. You filled in the story yourself in under 1 second, and then reacted to your own story like it was fact. Think about yesterday. Something irritated you. A message, a tone of voice, a delay. Now ask, was it actually the event that ruined your mood? Or the 3 minutes you spent deciding what it meant? What if that email never meant what you assumed it did? Marcus wasn't pretending pain didn't exist. He buried people he loved. He felt loss like anyone else. What he refused to do was let the first emotional impulse run the show without question. Before reacting, he paused and asked what the moment actually required, not what his anger wanted. That tiny pause shaped the man history remembers. You're not running an empire. But the war hasn't changed. Tomorrow morning, someone will cut you off in traffic, and for half a second your whole body will tighten with rage over a stranger you'll never see again. Someone will leave your message on read for 6 hours, and your mind will start writing a story about why. Someone in a meeting will criticize your work in front of people you wanted to impress, and your face will get hot before you've even decided how to respond. Now remember, Marcus. Remember the pause. Remember that the event and the reaction were never the same thing. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. Imagine 10 years from now. Same job maybe, same kind of problems, just wearing different costumes. People still criticize you, money still comes and goes, life is still uncertain, still messy, still unpredictable in the exact same ways it is right now. But one thing has changed. Nothing owns your mind anymore. You feel the sting. You notice the anger rise. You see the old story trying to right itself in your head. And then you choose. Not because you became someone else, because you trained the part of you that was always free and just never knew it. That's the entire promise hidden inside this old journal. Not a life without hardship. A mind that hardship can no longer control. Imagine him, alone in that freezing tent, writing by candlelight while an empire waited on his next decision. Now picture yourself, scrolling through a message at midnight, replaying something someone said. Different century. Same exact battle. The only difference, he trained for it daily, in private, long before the crisis arrived. He didn't wait to be tested. He built the discipline in the small, boring moments, so the big ones couldn't break him.